Now reading, he says World War One echoes in Japan-China tensions. Japanese Prime Minister he has said Japan and China should avoid repeating the past mistakes of Britain and Germany, which fought in World War One despite strong economic ties, according to his main government spokesman in Tokyo. Abe was speaking on the sidelines of the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, on Wednesday. Comments were provided by Chief Secretary after the Financial Times said Abe had told reporters that China and Japan were in a similar situation to reporters that China and Japan were in a similar situation to Britain and Germany before 1914, whose close economic ties had not prevented the conflict. He also said China's steady rise in military spending was a major source of regional instability. The newspaper reported. Suga said earlier in the day that Abe's comments should by no means be interpreted to mean that war between the two Asian giants was possible, noting that Abe had said dialogue and the rule of law, not armed force and threats, were needed for peace and prosperity in Asia. Sino-Japanese ties, long plagued by what Beijing sees as Japan's failure to atone for its occupation of parts of China in the 1930s and 1940s, have worsened recently due to a territorial role. Tokyo's mistrust of Beijing's military build-up and Abe's December visit to a shrine that critics said glorifies Japan's wartime past. Suga told a news conference that Abe, noting that this year is the 100th anniversary of the start of World War One, said Britain and Germany crashed despite their deep economic ties. Asked if China and Japan might crash militarily, Abe replied that such a conflict would be a great loss not only for Japan and China, but for the world, and we need to make sure such a thing would not happen, according to Suga. China and Japan, the world's second and third largest economies respectively, have deep business ties and bilateral trade that was worth nearly $334 billion in 2012, according to Japanese figures. China criticized Abe's historical reference. It would be better to face up to what Japan did to China before the war than in recent history than to say stuff about pre-World War I British to German relations. Foreign Ministry spokesman Qin Gang told a news conference in Beijing. U.S. Deputy Secretary of State William Burns, on a visit to Beijing this week, stressed that all sides should avoid unilateral action to assert maritime claims, and that China should work with its neighbors to reduce tension in the east, and South China Seas. China's defense ministry said an Air Force patrol in the East China Sea Air Defense Identification Zone, set up by Beijing late last year, despite protests from Japan, South Korea, the United States, and others. Had recently encountered several foreign military aircraft and given them verbal warnings. It did not say which country the aircraft were from, but added that China had investigated their identity. New Year message. In a message on Thursday to local Chinese language papers ahead of the Lunar New Year, Abe said Japan had built a free and democratic country and taken the path of peace. Since the end of World War II, nothing has been changed in the policy of continuing to uphold this position, he said. According to a Japanese version provided by the Prime Minister's office, I believe you, who live in Japan, can understand this fundamental stance of ours. In his keynote address at the Damas Forum, Abe called for military restraint in the region and took a veiled swipe at China's military build-up. We must restrain military expansion in Asia, which could otherwise go unchecked, Abe said. Military budgets should be made completely transparent, and there should be public disclosure in a form that can be verified, Abe said, adding disputes should be resolved through dialogue and the rules of law, and not through force and coercion. He did not single out China by name. He also defended his visit to Tokyo's shrine, which is seen by critics as a symbol of Japan's past militarism because it honors leaders convicted as war criminals along with those killed in battle. China's state news agency blasted the visit again on Thursday, saying it was taken by all peace-loving nations as a despicable kowtow in fascism, and accusing Abe of pushing regional tensions precariously close to boiling. Added, while frozen ties with neighboring countries can never make Japan a reliable and constructive player in regional and global issues, sincere repentance over its war past can. Abe's December 26th pilgrimage prompted a rare statement of disappointment from Tokyo's ally, Washington, which is worried about rising regional tensions and fears entanglement in rising regional tensions and fears entanglement in any conflict over tiny uninhabited isles in the East China Sea that are controlled by Japan but also claimed by China. Claimed by China. Now reading about Australian police crack global money laundering racket. Australian police revealed Thursday they had cracked a major global money laundering ring with operatives in more than 20 countries and funds informed of two groups reported to include the Australian Crime Commission said more than 580 Australian million of drugs and assets had been seized, including $26 million in cash in a year-long sting, condemned targeting the offshore laundering of funds generated by outlaw motorcycle gangs, people smugglers, and others. According to the ACC, the operation had disrupted. The operation had disputed. And the operation had disrupted 18 serious and organized crime groups and singled out 128 individuals of interest in more than 20 countries, tapping information from agencies including the United States Drug Enforcement Administration. The full details of which countries had been involved were not revealed, but acting ACC chief Paul said the reality is that the Middle East and Southeast Asia have featured prominently. Drug importations into Australia continue to be the main profit source by organized crime here in this country. But there is a range of our things: serious organized investment frauds, identity theft, said. Article saw 105 people arrested on 109 separate charges and resulted in the closure of 3 major clandestine methamphetamine labs and Australia's largest ever urban hydroponic cannabis hothouse in Sydney last November. It was described as one of the most successful money laundering investigations in Australian law enforcement history by the ACC. The task force focused on high-threat money laundering activities and, as a result, revealed a range of different crime types, which has led to these extraordinary outcomes, said Australia's Justice Minister. Seizing more than 550 million worth of drugs and cash, is a significant blow to the criminal economy. He added, legitimate international cash wiring services were a major focus of the operation, with the government anti-laundering agency awestruck saying they had been identified as a at high risk of being exploited by serious and organized crime groups. Record seizure. A Fairfax media expose on the operation found criminals targeted foreign nations and students in Australia awaiting remittances from overseas, hijacking the transaction by depositing dirty money to the payee and then taking the cash wired from offshore. Fairfax said at least one of the exchange houses used in the Middle East and Asia delivered a cut from every dollar it laundered to powerful Shadi movement and Syria ally, which is banned as a terrorist organization in Australia. It was just never ending, said ACC acting chief Cole Blanche. We were regularly fined bags of 500,000 and 400,000. Aligo netted a record Australian $5.7 million single cash seizure in Sydney at the weekend. Seven suitcases stuffed with bills uncovered in an apartment near the city's airport. A 55-year-old U.S. citizen who recently arrived in Australia via Costa Rica has been charged with dealing with the proceeds of crime over the stash. This is one of Australia's largest cash seizures, said Federal Police Commissioner Tony Negus. The ACC is also monitoring the use of Bitcoin, a so-called virtual cryptocurrency generated by a complex computer algorithm. Bitcoin made headlines that year when U.S. authorities closed the Silk Road website after the currency was found being used to buy illegal drugs, forged documents, hacker tools, and even the services of hidden. Organized crime is estimated to cost Australia $10 to $15 billion per year by the ACC, with drugs, money laundering, fraud, firearms, and high-tech cyber offenses the major issues. Profits from transnational organized crime were estimated at $870 billion in 2009, the latest available data. According to the ACC's 2013 report into the sector, that represented about 1.5% of global GDP at the time. Thai court. I'm reading about Thai court differs election date ruling. Capital calm. Thailand's Constitutional Court on Thursday deferred a ruling on whether a general election scheduled for February 2nd can be postponed, as protesters who say they will boycott the vote kept up pressure on the government to step down. Prime Minister declared a 60-day state of emergency in Bangkok and surrounding areas from Wednesday, hoping to prevent an escalation in the protests now in their third month. The election commission says the country is too volatile to hold a general election now, and that technicalities mean it is anyway bound to result in a parliament with too few lawmakers to form a quorum. The government says the decree to hold the election on that date has been signed by the king and cannot be changed. The Constitutional Court has accepted this case, and we will look at the legal issues involved. If there is enough evidence, we may hand down a decision tomorrow, said court spokesman Paimo Samphisakupong. The protest, or the latest eruption in a political conflict that has gripped the country for 8 years. The emergency decree failed to clear the demonstrators, though the capital has been relatively calm this week. Broadly, the conflict pits the Bangkok middle class and royalist establishment against the mainly poorer scholars of and her brother, ex-premier who was toppled by the military in 2006. Nine people have been killed in outbursts of violence, including two grenade attacks in Bangkok last weekend. A leading pro-government activist was shot and wounded on Wednesday in Thailand's northeast, a stronghold of family, in what police said may have been a political attack, adding to fears the violence could spread. A ruling in favor of the election commission would deepen Thailand's political quagmire, already weighing on investors' enthusiasm for Southeast Asia's second biggest economy. The main opposition Democrat Party says it will boycott the vote. Protest leader Sula, a former Democrat minister, wants democracy's suspended so that the democracy suspended so that the People's Council can push through electoral and political changes. Thai living overseas have already voted, and some advance voting takes place around the country on Sunday. The protesters have said they would try to disrupt the election. Fears of election violence. On Wednesday, an unidentified gunman opened fire on a leader of Thailand's pro-government Red Shirt movement and a popular radio DJ. The attack in Udon Thani, about 450 kilometers, and is also 280 miles northeast of Bangkok, was the most significant violence outside the capital and illustrate the risk that the turbulence could spread to another parts of Thailand. Just the day before, and had warned of a nationwide fight if the military launched a coup, as widely feared. So far, the military, which has been involved in 18 actual or attempted coups in the last 81 years, has kept out of the fray. Police are charged with enforcing the state of emergency and are under orders from to show restraint. We announced a state of emergency to help police to do their work, told reporters on Thursday. But given what happened in 2010, I don't want police to use it. I don't want police to use force outside of the legal framework, she added, referring to a military crackdown that year on protesters during which scores were killed. Army chief said this week his troops might have to play a bigger role if serious violence breaks out. If such violence erupted and no one is able to stop it, the troops would have to step in and tackle it. We will look after our nation using the right methods, he told reporters. The emergency decree gives security agencies powers to detain suspects, impose a curfew, and limit gatherings. Some analysts said it was in part designed to give legal protection if police step in. Several governments have warned their nationals to avoid protest areas in Bangkok. Among the world's most visited cities, China called on Thailand to restore stability and order as soon as possible through talks. I'm now reading about special report how Caterpillar got photos in China. Asia's top mergers and acquisitions bankers gathered 2 years ago at the Guangqi Island in Hong Kong to celebrate the top deals of 2012. As the transactions were being toasted, one was unraveling. Advisors on Caterpillar Incorporation's $677 million purchase of ERA Mining, Machinery, Ltd. picked up an award for cross-border deal of the year. The purchase was billed as a coup for Caterpillar, the world's top maker of tractors and excavators. ERA was the holding company for Equipment Manufacturing Corporation Ltd., one of China's biggest makers of hydraulic coal mine roof support. 诗人 would help Caterpillar gain traction in the world's largest coal industry.